Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejan Sarowick. Sejan?
Hey everybody! As Devin pointed out before we started, it's the end of 2020. Everybody,
Yeah, this is our last new episode of 2020. There'll still be content next week, but we recorded it a while ago. I don't think I had a beard when we recorded it. just to like give you an arbitrary movement of time. But this is it. This is our celebration of the end of 2020 and about damn time.
yeah, man, this was supposed to be the year, right?
It really was. Like, if we want to talk about the fact that A, it was a leap year, B, it was Halloween on a Saturday, and what was that?
On a blue moon, right?
On a blue moon, yeah. Like, that should have been a big party here. The solstice and the whole conjunction, collision, bunch of people on Twitter thinking it's going to give them superpowers, and that might happen. Saturn and Jupiter being in alignment might give someone superpowers.
Yeah, man, they're going to officially shake hands this
Oh
year.
my God.
That's the term, like.
I mean, I think that's probably why they call it the Saturnalia, right? Because Saturn's involvement.
Uh-huh.
But something, I don't know. I'm not a man who knows about the origins of words. I'm not a word scientist.
This was an election year. This was the first year we were gonna really be doing a Marvel movie without the MCU writ large looming over it,
without an Infinity Stone in there.
Right? Yeah, right. Like it was. This was supposed to be a restart. I mean, Cyberpunk 2077 was finally supposed to come out after almost a decade of waiting for that game.
Hey, Sejan, since you brought it up, and I'm sure we got more patter about 2020 and what it was supposed to be, do you want to backpedal on your statements about Cyberpunk 2077 last week? That, like, some people are having fun, or do you stand by it?
I stand by it because now the real fucking issue is a lot of people are now complaining because they can't play their game.
Yeah. That's
like actually, yeah, more people have come out of the woodwork to be like, I wasn't having a problem. Stop fucking around with my shit. So
I cannot believe the new one. I imagine you've heard the new one, right? You have to have heard the new one.
The new complaint of I requested a refund, got my refund, and I still can't play my game.
Oh, no. That's a different. We look at different ends of the spectrum, apparently, of the gamer TM. No, and that's not even what this is related to. This is just all of these people who are having no problem with Cyberpunk come to find out that if your save file gets too big, and I believe it's like 8 megabytes is the too big, like that's the cap, it just deletes itself.
That's new to me as somebody that like is paying pretty close attention. I thought I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, I mean the size, I might be wrong about the size, but they came out and they're like, all right, so PC players have been complaining that their save games have just been getting deleted. And we looked into it, and it turns out you guys shouldn't be picking up everything that we put in the game for you to pick up, as making your save files too big.
That's a weird response. I would believe more that it was like a settings save because maybe they have more going. I don't know. That's real weird. That's to say you shouldn't be picking everything up in our RPG is fucking ridiculous. I mean, like, anybody that's ever played a Fallout knows you pick up everything.
I've been playing Cyberpunk 2077. I had hoped to have it finished by this episode, but because and just the story content, because I heard that the story was relatively small, but I got detoured, and we're gonna talk about that detour because it's also important. Because I would have been using Stadia, but instead I was using Luna. But that's, again, for later in the episode. But that was my plan. And as someone who's been playing Cyberpunk 2077, more like Cyberpunk 2077, how much do we have to pay Ashton Kutcher for that joke? Because, like, I feel like it was worth it.
Dangerfield so much for that joke. What the fuck, man?
But I found a glowing electric purple dildo very early on in the game, and that falls into the category in your inventory as what is known as junk. And when you're in a store, you can sell all of your junk.
Mm-hmm.
But then, much like, let's say Borderlands 3, because it's something I know we've both played. Oh, I didn't mean to sell that particular piece. You can buy it back. I have continued to buy that back. And I feel trained from another game that has been brought up a lot because of Cyberpunk 2077, and that's Duke Nukem Forever, and its 14-year development cycle to ultimately deliver a game that most people were disappointed by. I had fun. It was a fun July 4th weekend renting it from the Redbox and beating it to a pulp, and then seeing it at Walmart, I'm going to say 2 weeks later for $5 and buying it.
Yeah, maybe. I go ahead, because there's a ocean of differences between Duke Nukem and Cyberpunk. But
don't get me wrong that there's an ocean of differences. But what it is in that game, there's a trophy for, in the beginning of the game, when you start at Duke's palatial estate, you have his handgun, which is all gold, like it's gold plated, and has the Duke Nukem symbol on the grip. And if you keep that in your inventory the entire game, you get a trophy. It's very similar to the Gnome trophy in Half-Life 2, I believe. Not that I've played any Half-Life games. Confessions of a Devin Decker.
Or the eventual mod in Left 4 Dead, which was the gnome of healing. Essentially, if you had it, you were constantly healing. Yeah. But you had to keep it on you the whole time if you wanted to do anything with it, which meant that like you couldn't fight anything in that game.
But you're being healed, which is important against zombies, I guess. You're a zombie yourself, but you're a different kind of zombie. Thought processing. But it's one of those situations where I'm like, this dildo was the first thing that I found. I'm going to bring it to the end of the game. I doubt there's a trophy for it, but what if there was? Also, do Stadia achievements even count as someone who's played Stadia? Do you care about Stadia achievements the same way you care about anything else?
Devin, I don't care about achievements on my PlayStation. You know that for a fact. As somebody that has tried to get me to like talk about like platinuming games and stuff, and it just never happens for me. Wow. Like I've platinumed 4 games in my life, and you know what they all were? They were all Telltale games that you just get the trophy just for finishing the chapter.
That's a good point.
Like that's how I have platinumed games in my life. So like, no, I don't care about Stadium achievements.
All right. Well, I just had to ask, but it's just one of those things. So, I mean, if this is a game that's like, don't pick up stuff, and there's stuff that they literally classify as junk in the game, it's just funny. It was just a funny, like, end to everything. Cyberpunk 2077 for me was like, oh, make sure you're not picking up everything, guys. Your save file might get too big. And then the game's like, oh, we got to delete that. It's too big. Also, they make too many save files for you. I tried to load a game, and like the auto saves in Cyberpunk 2077 is ridiculous.
I have had that problem with RPGs for a long time because like, especially because on the PlayStation, the UI specifically for loading saves hasn't really changed much between the 3 and the 4. And so it's basically just a list of screen caps on the left and then like date, time stamp on the right and all that. And like maybe a character name so that you at least know what character you're loading. And RPGs in general have gotten fucking out of hand. They auto save, and rather than replace the latest auto save, they stack. And then on top of that, you can save. And a lot of people, me included, like to like save like multiple like branching points so that they if they fuck something up real bad, they can go back to that point and choose the other option. So you end up with a dozen of your own save points, 3 dozen of their points, and the PlayStation UI is fucking miserable to sort through to figure out which save you really want to go back to. So I don't doubt for a second that the Stadia has followed suit with just auto saving probably every 5 seconds.
I mean, I feel like it's probably the game, because it's all within the game. It's not like, I know exactly what you're talking about, where PlayStation, where you go to load a game and it's that PlayStation crossbar, like those graphics load in order to do that. This one, it feels like I'm still within Cyberpunk, and in the brain of Cyberpunk, that's how they're doing it. And I guess I'm spoiled. Spoiled might be the wrong word, but it's how I feel about it. Because, Dark Souls, it autosaves, there ain't no going back. You fucked up. You fucked up. Good thing this game has New Game Plus, or you can re-roll a new character.
Good luck.
Yeah. So that's it. It's just I really wanted to get that out of the way if we're talking about 2020, because the latest disappointment that's not COVID related, because my Twitter, I somehow got on London Twitter. Like, there's all these different names for Twitters, but mine yesterday, the hashtag Christmas canceled was up and down my feed.
Because of fucking Fargy or Fargy, whatever. I don't know. He's not one of ours. What do I care?
Yeah.
But yeah, Nigel Fargy out there, like, I believe the exact tweet was "Christmas is canceled. Thank you, China." Which it might be the worst thing I've ever seen written on Twitter.
That's saying something.
I mean, you know what it is? It is the short, sweet, and to the point racism that like cannot be denied. That is just so upsetting about it. Whereas like other people, it is masked in layers of bullshit that like. It's not hard to parse. Like, a dog whistle is real easy to spot, especially in 2020. But there is something about the blunt racism and ignorance of that tweet that gets under my skin and pisses me off in a way that has never really happened before with Twitter. And like, luckily I don't go on every day or like check every, you know what I mean? Like It's not a thing that is part of my life as much as it is for some people. And you do you live your life, but I bet you'd be a lot happier if you weren't on Twitter 24 hours a day. That's all I'll say. But anyway, even I caught that one, and even that one pissed me off in a terrible way.
Yeah.
I'm surprised to hear that it was trending.
Well, I guess it was, I don't know. It was strange to see it trending. It was strange to see it trending because of the reason why I want to bring it up. And the reason why I want to bring it up is it just feels so Rankin and Bass.
Yeah, there is a little bit of very specifically Santa Claus is coming to town, and that dude that like runs the town and doesn't let anybody have toys and shit.
Meisterburger.
Yeah. Like I can totally get behind that.
Yeah, I get that. And it's also Year Without a Santa Claus, where like Christmas is canceled this year.
Because Santa has a disease that he doesn't want to spread to the children. Yeah.
Well, or Santa, in that one, Santa's just like depressed, so he's like, I'm depressed, no Christmas. And I feel like
Year Without a Santa Claus is the one where he has a cold. And
no.
He can't get out of bed.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I guess we'll have to cancel. You're not wrong. There's a level of like where he's also not feeling Christmas.
Well, right. It is a mix of he is not feeling well, but he's willing to fight through it. But then he realizes that Christmas is kind of meh, and so it becomes this thing for him where like it's actually a very forward-thinking interpretation of the ways that physical and mental health.
Yeah, no, like it's
because he is physically unhealthy, which leads to him kind of making some terrible mental decisions that really just drives him into more sickness because of how depressed he is. It is a vicious cycle of physical and mental illness affecting one another to Santa in that movie.
Which is why Year Without a Santa Claus is probably my favorite of the Rankin and Bass. Like, everybody cites Mother Nature and Heatmeister and Snowmiser, as great as they are in that one. But the thing about Rankin and Bass is a central theme in most of their, let's call it, original programming. Right?
Yeah.
So like ones that are not interpretations of other stories, which might just be Little Drummer Boy. Because, like, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, by all accounts, it was a song, and then they made it like the special.
Kind of like Frosty. Yeah. They took the semi-Disney approach, and that, like, they went back into folklore and found some stuff that everybody knew. But they took a really interesting approach in, like, finding ones that didn't have a deep history of, like, other versions to bastardize, like Disney did.
Right. Like, in Santa Claus is Coming to Town, that seems fairly real. So does The Year Without a Santa Claus. And Rudolph, those three specifically have the phrase, well, Christmas is canceled this year. And my thought every time I hear that is like, well, Jesus is probably going to have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Like at this point, Santa, you saying Christmas is canceled, you're tantamount to the Grinch, thinking that like, well, if kids can't get presents, no fucking Christmas. Like,
Yeah, and I know we kind of, like touched on this for like a second in our Grinch episode, our Christmas episode coming out this week. But the genius of Nightmare Before Christmas and the idea that it uses a lot of the same kind of like concepts that these Christmas specials do, and that like there is like a weird Christmas is canceled sense in that, except that it is Christmas for a group of people that have never experienced Christmas before. Like that exact phrase is I guess Christmas is canceled is uttered, but it's actually got a completely different meaning because it is a group of people that have never experienced it before, which is really interesting. But that is definitely something that is like in the DNA of those kinds of specials for sure.
Yeah, but December 25th still happens.
Mm-hmm.
Christmas still happens.
That's what they always learn, Devin.
That is
the catharsis of all of those stories, is that Christmas 25 still comes. We learned that this year ourselves due to Jim Carrey.
Right. So what boggles my mind is that there has been 50 years of propaganda telling us that Christmas happens no matter what. Christmas happens. And that's okay. That maybe it's not going to be the same, but it's still going to be Christmas. And still, that is everybody running to the internet to be like, Christmas is canceled. Can't go out on Christmas. Christmas is canceled. And
yeah, I mean, well,
that's weird to me. That's it. That's all I'm trying to say.
Well, it's that thing that like art imitates life imitates art type of thing, where like I'm sure that there has been stuff in the past. That idea of Christmas is canceled did not just come to the creative minds at Rankin Bass that when they created those specials. That idea that something comes up that always gets in the way of Christmas. Now, like, it could be on like a micro level of like, oh, I can't go home for Christmas this year. I lost my job. I can't afford a ticket. Or like, you know, like there are so many Christmas specials that revolve around both micro and then like macro level issues in which Christmas cannot happen. And it is clear that like we have not truly embraced some of those lessons when somebody in real life, like this asshole who's like, oh, you can't leave, so I guess Christmas is over. Like, we all thought, people with common sense all thought we knew that Christmas was not just this like thing where you buy material goods and hand them to one another, but in fact actually like loving and caring about one another. So in fact, the most Christmassy thing that you can do this year is in fact stay home and warm by the fire, because it's not only going to keep you safe, but keep the ones that you love like safe as well. Like, it is in fact kind of uber Christmas this year because of the idea that we have to kind of remove the entire idea of like being forced to see people that we're not even sure we love to go and like hand them material goods that we spent way too much money on, to consume a bunch of food that we're only going to feel shitty about the next day. It's like the fact that we are actually all losing that. I mean, we are in a Christmas special, Devin. Like, this is it. This 2020 is a Christmas special.
Right. So what I'm saying is, let's be the framing device.
Oh, you want to be the snowman? You could be the old snowman.
I feel like the old snowman. I actually have on the snowman hat today.
Silver and gold.
It turns out if I turn around my Eddie Griffin from Malcolm and Eddie hat, I can be that snowman. What can a Kangol hat do is really the question.
You got to do the Fievel Goes West trick where he turns his fucking boat hat inside out, and it just turns into a cowboy hat when it's inside out, apparently.
Yeah, that's Fievel Goes West. That's a movie we'll talk about someday on this show. But right now is the end of 2020, and I don't know, I did some stuff over the weekend that I wouldn't mind diving into. I'm sure you did the same. What do you got, Siege? What can you bring to the table?
So there's been a lot going on lately in this house that has revolved around like wrapping up 2020 for us, and I think that like nothing is more symbolic in this particular household than the fact that in my family game of Stardew Valley, we we completed the community center and like what I consider to be like main game for Stardew, which is important because like Stardew is one of those games that doesn't have like a true like narrative spine. So really, I mean, the game is what you make of it, right? So much like an Animal Crossing or a Harvest Moon, like deciding when you're done with that game is entirely up to you, right? Um, but I don't know. I feel like I've mentioned it on and off that it's been something that I've been playing, but we have had an actual family farm going for almost the entirety of this pandemic. I've been super into Stardew for a while now, but it was always one of those things where I would start a farm and I would kind of get maybe we'll say 2 seasons into it because the way that that game works is year cycles are 4 28-day seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very very easy to keep track of exactly what day you're on and exactly what you're doing, how many days you have left to grow certain crops and talk to certain people and things like that. Um, and then like every so often there's an event. Like in the spring, there's always 2 events a season. In the spring, one of the events is a flower dance where everybody in town shows up, and depending on your like relationship level with people, you can ask them to dance with you at the flower dance. Then there's the Easter surrogate of the egg hunt day, where you like go into town and everybody hunts for eggs, and you can win prizes depending on how many you find. And then like so on and so forth for other seasons. And I've never truly gotten past like summer. Like I've seen what fall looks like, and really by that point I kind of tend to drop off of Stardew because by that point I've probably put personally like 10 hours into the game, and which is to me like more than enough time for me to feel like I've gotten something out of the game before I feel like there needs to be something really pulling me through. And if it seems insurmountable for me, I will walk away from a game. So like a lot of what happens with like Animal Crossing, just to give a counter example, where like I got 2 weeks, 3 weeks into that game, I'd put about 12 hours into it, and then like the stuff that was coming up was like, hey, if you get like 500,000 bells, you can upgrade your house, and I'm sitting there looking at my like 20,000 bells, being like, nah. And like I killed my island, and like I would rather restart my island than keep pushing through. And I was kind of feeling that a lot with Stardew over the time that I'd been playing it, is I'd get a few seasons in, I'd be okay with where I was and be like, I want to keep playing this game, but this particular goal seems a little both out of my reach and not something I really care about, so I'm going to restart. So it was like huge for me to get like other people to play with me, because I always am more engaged and easier. It's easier to pull me along when other people are there to help. It does not feel so insurmountable. So like this was the first time that I have pushed through multiple years, not just seasons, but multiple years. On top of that, we finally finished one of the many narrative structures of that game is that there's a community center in town, and you can bring things to it, like crops you grow or animal products that you generate, like so and it's separated into different rooms in the community center will require different things. So just for example, there's like a craft room, and in order to rebuild the craft room you have to continuously bring just crops from year round. So there's a bundle in that room that requires that you bring 4 different types of crops from the summer, and there's a bundle in that room that requires 4 different types of crops from the spring. So it's going to take you about a year to get through everything, to grow everything. There's ways around that, but that's getting way too deep into game mechanics. But like the idea is that as you grow stuff, you bring stuff, and after a year you've now completed the craft room, and now the craft room is now open to everybody. And then like you go through different rooms within the thing. There's everything from a kitchen to a boiler room that you kind of have to like work your way through to like fix the place up. And it's really cool because it does really kind of it does this really great thing where narratively it's driving you, because people keep talking about how great it is that somebody's working on the community center, and like the mayor of the town like comes to you personally to be like, I need your help getting this together. Also on top of that, there's, I don't know how much you know about Stardew, but there is this underlying like concept of like small town life versus like corpo America coming in, like speaking about cyberpunk. But there is this like Walmart surrogate called JojaMart that if you don't complete the community center, you have the option to walk away at any point and buy a JojaMart membership, and they'll demolish the community center and use it as a warehouse. But then you can get like a ton of different new stuff from JojaMart. So you have this decision that you can make where you can either sell your soul to JojaMart and have a little bit easy in the beginning, but then you lose the entirety of like the community center story, or you can help build the community center Center, and then eventually the JojaMart story goes in a different direction. And so like there's also so there's that narrative structure pulling you through about that, but then on top of that, there's also all these really great game mechanic things pulling you through, because like I become much more interested in planting crops because I know I need certain crops for the community center, right? So yeah, just having somebody else, having other family members being able to jump onto the farm with me and like get through stuff, and suddenly I hit a point where I'm like, oh shit, we need like 20 pumpkins, and I'm not great at like growing pumpkins. I can maybe generate like 5. Oh, that's okay, because I've got somebody else that can help me. One of us can hoe all the land, one of us can plant all the seeds, one of us can water every other day so that we don't have to worry about it. Like, and suddenly it doesn't feel like it's that big of a task. So we have been doing this. This is what part of our 2020 has been, is like, you know, our weekends or even certain weeknights, like we'll curl up. I'll set up an extra TV up in the den with my PS4 on one and my PS4 Pro on the other, and we'll cross play with each other. Like we'll multiplay Stardew Valley, and like it has been no joke. It is like I don't know how we could have gotten through this year without having that as something to lean back on certain days. Like it has been something that I have actually like anticipated, and I've started to do like research and watch like YouTube videos of like better farm layouts and stuff like that. Like it has become something that I've been able to invest myself in, and that was so important for 2020. So having this particular weekend, this past weekend, we finally finished the community center, and it was like a huge thing. And now there is some after stuff story to do, so there's definitely reasons for us to go back, but it just feels like I have actually accomplished something in 2020 in a way that I don't know if I could have planned for this at the beginning of the year.
That's cool. I have not played Stardew Valley, so a lot of that is new to me, and I thank you for that. But I'm reminded of 1998 when I continued to rent Harvest Moon from the local video store. And don't worry, I had a hack for it. I had a life hack for it. The reminder gave out a bunch of coupons for free rentals, and there was no limit of those. So I went to a bunch of reminder places where they dropped them off and just took them all. So if you weren't able to get a reminder in the summer of 1998 in Coventry, Rhode Island, I'm the reason why. And I apologize. There's probably a statute of limitations on that, right? Like, I don't think I can be prosecuted for taking the free newspaper.
I mean, no.
And I later worked at the video store, so I think that balanced out. I think they got my blood for what I did that one summer.
As somebody that used to do the same thing with the Providence Phoenix because of all of the sex ads in the back, you're fine.
Okay, good. Thank you. I really want to delve into that, but that seems like a post-2020 conversation. I don't even know why someone needs multiple copies of the same sex ad. But so my time with Harvest Moon, I always want to play it again as an adult. That's one of those games that I want to go back to, but I can't recapture that joy of spending a summer building a farm and actually completing the 2 years in-game worth of content that is there. Like, there's a real story that exists for those 2 years, and you get a grade on how well you were able to build up your uncle's farm at the end of those two, and getting the A grade and having the wife and it being the girl in town that, like, I was actually, you know, trying to pursue. And like, that was fun, but like, I've tried to start up Harvest Moon a million times since, and every time I get to about summer and I'm like, how did I do this as a kid? Like,
yeah, I mean, like, and some people get super into it on their own, and like, there's definitely an ability to keep playing that game. I mean, like, I think Harvest Moon also has this too, but there is also a ton of other stuff you can do besides building a farm. Like, if you decide you want to start that game and you just want to be the kind of guy that like goes into the mines, you can, and there's actually like combat in the mines and stuff too. Like, that's really interesting. Or if you're the kind of person that's like, I want to play fishing. Like, I just want to fish for all of my money. You can totally play that game in that way. There's going to be certain elements of the game that aren't going to necessarily work for you if you choose to play those ways, but that's the whole point, is like, it's not in your face. It's not like when you play like for instance like a clicker game or something like that, where it's constantly throwing at you all the things you could be doing if you just try this or just tried that. It never pushes you in any particular direction. It lets you know, like, hey, this is a tool that's available to you now. You now have the fishing rod. You now have the pickaxe. You now have the eventually, if you work your way through the community center, eventually you get an ore like pan, so you
Oh,
can go
nice.
panning for gold in like the sea and stuff like that. It's very very silly, but it's also very cool. And like, but again, there's never anything that's like constantly in your face saying, "Hey, go do this thing." There's not a there's not a UI piece that's like, "Hey, this thing is important, and if you don't do it, you're going to lose like an entire third of this game," which like that's been one of the coolest things for me is learning all of these other things that are out there, because like there's parts and there's stuff that people online have now gotten to, or even people in this house that have seen, because you get like cutscenes with certain characters depending on what things you do, that I've just never even realized was possible. And like I was like, oh my god, I want to try that. Or I've seen stuff and I've been like, that is fucking wild. I have no idea how you see that. And also, it is so beyond anything that I care about in this game that I'm not really going to push for that. Like, it's pretty amazing how well that game is put together, especially because one of the other big things about that game that gets a lot of love and really should like it should really be on the fucking box. That game is completely built, programmed, and soundtracked everything by one guy. One dude, I believe his name is like Eric Androni or something like that. He goes by the handle Concerned Ape. He's on like Reddit and Twitter and all that stuff. And that's like that is how he's known by a lot of people. And this dude has completely been a one-man team for this entire game. And I kid you not, like the soundtrack included, like he composed all the music for it. He has done all the programming. He has done all the writing. He has done all of the early art for it transferred into, and it has got such a following and such a universe and such a love and a fan base that like I the dude never has to make another game in his life. And it's telling that he has been working on this game for 10 years, to the point where he has one final update out, which is referred to as the 1.5 update, that is coming any day now. It's been something that's been kind of out there, that it was coming for about a couple of months. And there's all these little drip and drops of things that are coming along with it for the last few months, of like what's going to be in it, including like a new type of farm, including like a new area to go and explore, a couple of new characters to be able to talk to, also like changes to the UI, changes to the ways in which you can like build your farm. You can actually like get real deep into like changing how often the RNG like screws you or helps you. Like it's crazy the amount of like technical work that's going on in this game, and knowing that it was all done by one dude is also just another part of like kind of the cult following of this game.
Cool. Very cool. Well,
Yep.
I mean, you've been trying to get me in on it. Once that 1.5 drops, you could probably convince me, because you've sold me based on this story. But
Especially because it's only $15. I
Yeah.
should also say
Well,
that it's a $15 game at full price.
Steve, you need to stop giving me beautiful segue points. Because right now, I am sitting here with a choose your own adventure book in front of me, and I could focus on the cost of gaming, or I could focus on the you gave me, I forgot it. It's going to be the cost of gaming. That's the segue I'm going to take. Oh, I was going to go back to time and like this one guy creating this thing. What do you want to look at? Time or cost?
Let's look at cost for a second, because
Okay.
I'm curious to know what you're gonna drop with this.
Well, what I'm going to drop is Amazon Luna. And I don't mean like I'm just going to name drop it and that's it. No, I'm done with Amazon Luna.
Oh,
And it's unfortunate that I say that, but a year ago we were talking about Google Stadia, and there were all these fears about what cloud gaming would be, and most of those fears didn't come to pass, mostly unsubstantiated. Luckily, Amazon Luna went and found all those problems and decided,
oh no.
here you go, enjoy them. I spoke about it a little bit on the show, or on a past episode, about playing River City Girls, which seemed like the perfect test for me, because it's a game that I've played a bunch and I know, and the
You know
one
what it should do and what it should look like.
exactly.
So, yeah.
So the complaint is that during boss fights there would be network issues, and I'm talking like that was constantly during the boss fight. Everything else would play fine, and then during the boss fight, oh, it's like too many things are trying to get cloud streamed to you right now, and we can't do this anymore. And
Yeah, that's unfortunate on so many levels, but not least of which because I understand the respect and love we have for River City Girls on this show, but it's not the most complex game to be putting out over the airwaves. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like there's not too much going on. It's not like you have like fucking 3D explosions happening on screen left and right, right?
right. It's a 2D plane. Maybe like the highest I'd say the bit of the animation would be 32, but it's probably only a 16-bit game if we're talking like honesty. And no, like there's nothing real crazy going on during those fights. And it's not like it buffers during the cutscenes, because most of the boss fights start with a cutscene. It is when the cutscene ends that then it's like network issues, or like I'll be halfway through the fight and then network issues. But you know what? I figured, okay, while I'm playing here, maybe I'm not in the most ideal situation. I am playing in the basement, so there's concrete and there's other issues. Okay. So another game that is available with Amazon Luna on the Luna Plus program is Blasphemous. Now, I don't know if you know anything about the game Blasphemous. It's by Team 17, and it released in 2019.
Yeah, Team 17, so I'm assuming it's like a team, like, play with your friends and family type game?
No, it's a single-player Metroidvania. A lot of people weirdly compare it to Dark Souls, which I feel like that's an interesting thing that people do. Like, it's the 2D Dark Souls. And no, not really. As someone who's played a lot of Metroidvanias, it's basically a Metroidvania, but it has that thing of if you go back to where you died, you can collect the thing that you lost of yourself.
Yeah.
And in this game, it's not even like your currency that you lose. It's that you feel guilty because you're the penitent one. So your death leads to guilt. And if you don't collect your guilt, then you won't be able to use your magic. Like, I haven't really understood the full scope of the problem with being too guilty.
Yeah, okay. It's not something you relate to. I get it.
Right. No. I mean in the game. Like, I understand guilt in real life. I can keep it down, but I know that it's a thing that exists. I just don't understand it as a mechanic in this particular game, to the point that it's a punishment if you have guilt out there that you haven't dealt with.
I mean, yeah, it just sounds like it's like, hey, collect your shit. Like, you died there, make sure you get back there and collect your stuff, which a lot of these roguelites like to do, which is, I can see why that would be kind of somewhat compared to Dark Souls. And like, hey, your souls are still sitting on the ground there, make sure you stop by and pick them up.
Yeah. But it doesn't feel the same as in like Dark Souls. Also, there are statues everywhere where you can pay and they will absolve you of your guilt, because like there's some heavy gothic imagery and kind of religious overtones in the game called Blasphemous. Who knew?
Oh.
But Blasphemous is a game that I've been interested in as someone who, like, you know, Bloodstained and, you know, Shantae, Time Spinner, The Messenger, all of these Metroidvania games that I play, that I enjoy. But the thing that kept me away from Blasphemous is that it was $25. And I know that, like, in the grand scheme of things and cost of video games, $25 might not seem much, especially as we're staring down the barrel of $70 for a new game being the new normal in the gaming industry. And I still don't fully understand that. So
yeah, I don't. Are you gonna? Yeah, it's weird because like equating cost to like time in game or abilities in game, like what is the metric? There really isn't one, right? But there's definitely a line in which I, as a consumer, no longer feel like I'm getting my money's worth. That definitely is the case.
Right, and when I can get other Metroidvanias, right? Like I did Axiom Verge this year, and it wasn't $25. Like that $25 could buy me 3 Metroidvanias, and I'm more interested in seeing how 3 different game companies approach that style of action-y adventure exploration than just dumping all my cash into one. Because at the end of the day, they're all unproven to me. I haven't played any of these games.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you're talking about, and like, I was not kidding when you mentioned that it was Team 17, and I thought that you were about to talk to me about like a multiplayer, family fun, like friend game, because like Team 17, these are the guys that created like Overcooked. These are the guys that did that one this year, Moving Out, that was pretty popular on streaming for a bit because it's a team-based game. They do the Survivalist series, but the other thing that they do is they also do the Worms series, where like it's where you move the worms across stage and you pick up a gun and you shoot the other worms with your gun and shit like that. And there's like environmental destruction and all that fun stuff. So like their one-player experiences that we know about are things like Yooka-Laylee and stuff like that, like things that kind of haven't necessarily landed well. So I just wasn't prepared for you to talk about another one of those. But it sounds like they have some real trubs with these one-player experiences.
Well, okay, so the game, as far as I can tell, is beautifully built. Like the world that they've crafted, I love spending time in. And then, I'm playing on Luna, and every boss fight, it is the same network issue bug. And that's just so strange that, like, this is a huge world, right, that I am exploring, and I am moving pretty seamlessly from locale to locale as I'm trying to find every little hidden nook and cranny. And I feel like I'm pretty close to that. Like, there are collectibles, and I think I'm missing 5 of those, and there are cherubs to free, and I'm missing 4 of those. Like, it feels like I've done a pretty good job at that. But then, when I walk into a boss room, and the game crawls to a halt,
yeah,
like, it breaks my heart. But, so the first 3 things, it's also kind of structured Dark Souls-y, where you have to get the 3 marks in order to open up the Sacred Church. And then when you're in the Sacred Church, you need to collect, the 2 masks, the 3 masks in order to turn on the elevator. Like, ring the 2 bells and then collect the 4 souls. That type of thing where, like, we're giving you tasks, but we're hiding them in lore sort of stuff. So I kind of get that part of it.
Yeah.
But once you open up the church, right, it was late. It was like 12:30 on Friday evening, so it was actually Saturday morning. It was 0 Dark 30 on Saturday, December 19th. And I'm like, all right, I'm kind of tired, but I'll walk forward because if there's story, being tired, I'll actually be okay watching it. Like, if I'm awake, I'll be like, oh, story, I don't want to play. I don't want to see story. I want to play the game more. But I'm, like, receptive to story right now. So I go forward figuring that it'll just be a little bit of story, and then I can save and go to bed for the night. And no, Sejin, is a boss fight.
Okay. All right. So when you get network issues with like that on the Luna, like, does it end the game and you've got to restart, or are you able to at least like maintain your place? You just got to wait for it to reconnect.
It can go both ways. This one, I was not having any disconnects. It was just network issues. So I'd suddenly lose control of my character, die, and it would be fine because I'd go back in, I'd collect my guilt totem, and then the fight would commence again. And the only reason that it really started to get under my skin is that it got to the point where I was near the end of the fight, and then the network issues would kick in.
Ugh.
So I'm like, I should be done with this fight. Like, if that didn't happen, I'd have already beaten this character. Long story short, TLDR, I stayed up till 2 a.m. fighting this guy because, Devin Decker, once I get into a boss fight, I don't want to walk away from it.
Especially one that you've gotten so close to winning and you can win.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you're not losing because of any type of like wall that you've come up against. It's literally just the technology that is stopping you from finishing it. That is frustrating.
Yes, precisely. So the problem comes around, 1:30. So I've been doing it for about an hour. When my guilt marker stops showing up after I've died.
Oh. Okay.
So, I'm like, well, whatever. I can beat the guy. I don't need that. Really, it's just nice. I'm just collecting it so I don't have to go pay to have my guilt absolved later. And it's actually where I learned that if you have guilt out there in the world, beating a boss expunges it and you have a clean soul again, which is nice. Apparently, killing people, that's fine. with this god you've chosen to worship, penitent one. But dying, no, no, no. Thou shalt not die, thou shalt not kill in my commandments. Also, Doobie. Sorry. So I keep fighting, and eventually I beat the guy. Guilt is freed, and I save, I shut it down, and I'm like, all right, I will go back to that tomorrow. But then I'm lying in bed, and I'm trying to think of it, and I'm like, I need to know if the guilt stuff started to happen because it was a Luna problem. Because I could see that, like, being a network issue. Like, maybe it's just having an issue loading in that particular thing, however cloud streaming works. Like, I think I understand it in a rudimentary sense, but I'm by no means a cloud gaming expert.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So I go online, and I search guilt marker not showing up blasphemous, and no, this is a well-known issue that sometimes, like, the vector marks for where the guilt should spawn, it's just off on the y-axis. So your guilt marker is there, it's just below the area where you are, so you can never get it.
That's fucking wild. I mean, it's crazy that people even figured out that much about it, but, like, broken games, man.
Yeah, right, and this is a game that's been out, it's on 1.0.13, so there have been corrections, and one of the corrections was they knew about it, the people who made the game, so they made it so that if that ever happened, the guilt marker spawned in, like, the hub village at a certain location.
Yeah.
But then they decided, well, that's not fair because, like, people could just do that. Like, it takes away a part of the game. So then that was later patched out, but they didn't fix the problem.
So they had a Band-Aid, decided that this is just a Band-Aid and it's not a good one, and rather than cure the issue, they just ripped the Band-Aid off and let it bleed.
Right. So I am now very close to the end of this game. I have to imagine it's like 1-2 boss fights left. I'm still exploring the world. It still crawls to, like, a halt whenever I do a boss fight. And it's just like, that's just annoying. So, like, I want to go exploring. But then, now that I've come to find out that Amazon Luna, if you go into a boss fight and activate the boss fight and it's running like crap, that carries over to every other aspect of the game. So it's not like, well, I'll go explore a little bit. No. Now the rest of the game is going to have these same connection issues.
Until you finish the boss fight.
Until that goes away or you restart everything.
Oh, God.
So I'm just like, okay, well, I'm done right now. I'm frustrated with the game. I want to love this game. I want to enjoy this game. But I feel like what is stopping me from doing it, despite the fact that the game itself has known issues that I am admitting, is the platform that I am playing it on. And I initially wanted to come on the show today, and much like I did in episode of Season 3, Devin May Cry, tell you, Siegen, don't let me buy Blasphemous. No, I'm just going to return Amazon Luna. I have the time to do that. And then with the money I spent on their special controller, that's not very good and kind of cheaply made, I can get Blasphemous. I don't want to pay $25 for it. Maybe I'll wait for a sale, but I want to finish the game. They got me. Like, and that's the thing about having a Netflix for gaming, which is what Amazon Luna is kind of supposed to be, and what, like, Xbox Game Pass is, but Xbox Game Pass allows you to download the games. So these issues that I'm talking about, they're probably not going to happen there. I'd have to get an Xbox, though, or a PC that I'm happy with, you know, allowing Microsoft to have more control over if I get the Game Pass on that.
Right.
Like, I don't know. It just makes me nervous. Gaming on a PC makes me nervous because I use them as actual tools for work. Like, I need to have a dedicated gaming PC.
Yeah, no, and I don't blame you for that, because especially because a lot of the stuff that you want to do with gaming, you can get into some less than satisfactory situations with gaming on a PC, because, like, you have to talk to some unsavory folks sometimes on the internet to kind of do the things that you want to do. Like, hey, I want to check out this alpha for this game, because that's one of the joys of gaming on a PC, is that you have access to a ton of stuff that is not yet available on a console. It's a much more open platform, which is, like, on the one hand a blessing but also a curse. I can totally get that.
Yeah.
But yes, having one dedicated system that is your gaming system versus the one that you know put your life into, I totally understand.
Okay, thank you. But it sold me on this game that I was initially apprehensive to play because of the cost of admission.
Yeah.
So, like, I really wish that they could figure it out in a way that, like, Google Stadia, I'm like, I like you because you give me free games. The nervousness for me is that one day you're gonna go away, and that's not an if, that's a when. Because you're a Google product.
yeah, for sure. I love having the Google Stadia. I love paying them for the free games that they give me. I don't think I'll ever spend money on a game on it, though. You know, as much as you were talking last week about how you were not having so many problems with Cyberpunk on Stadia of all systems, and in fact, more people this week have come forward to me about, like, talking about playing Cyberpunk on their Stadia. And there was a couple of weird issues. Like, I guess they were having some issues where, like, if you hit the Google Stadia button during Cyberpunk, it would take like an extra 15 seconds for it to react to anything, which is really weird, and apparently just recently got patched out in like the recent patch that Cyberpunk put out. So it was apparently a Cyberpunk problem and not a Stadia problem. But anyway, like I had them coming to me and talk about how they were having a great experience, and we talked about the same thing that you and I did. The idea that it is probably running up very high-end, very particular version off of a Google server means that you're probably getting the best experience as far as a PC game could go, and that sort of stuff. And like I can't believe they spent money on Cyberpunk on it, but they did the same thing that you did, where they got the package with the controller and stuff. So like, to them, they weren't spending money on the game, I guess. But as long as I never spend money on a game that then I cannot play that game, I'm okay with the Stadia and like streaming gaming.
Yeah. And that's the real, that's the thing. Like, okay, so that's cool transition point. Have you ever heard of the movie Beautiful Girls, released in 1996, starring Timothy Hutton, even though he's fifth billed, but definitely the star of the movie?
I mean, that's weird, because didn't he also win an Oscar by that point? But yeah, I know what movie you're talking about, yeah.
Okay, I mean, I think the reason why he's not the main guy in it is that, Beautiful Girls, the only reason that I ever knew about Beautiful Girls, let alone then watched it 10 years later, is because I was sitting around at the comedy club talking to some comedians, and one of them brought up this movie that felt like, here's the future of Hollywood. Like, everybody who's in it went on to do crazy big things. Mm-hmm. And, like, those movies come along every so often, and this is the last one that they could think of. They're like, I can't really think of another one since Beautiful Girls that did that, where it was like, these are kind of unestablished people. You've maybe seen them once or twice, and we're saying, here's their coming out party. Here's...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the movie, yeah.
This is the movie. And maybe that's because of the rise of indie cinema. Maybe it's because of the fact that, if these work, if we put every person who everyone knows in Rat Race in 1999, we'll make $1 billion. Not that
sure.
$1 billion was ever made prior to where we are right now, but still, like, if it works with unknowns, imagine what it will do with knowns.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That discussion. So Beautiful Girls is a movie that I watched last week, and it's weird. It's a weird film. Like, Timothy Hutton is playing a 23-year-old. And there ain't no way he 23.
Yeah, that's real weird.
And especially the fact that he's like 10 years older than his friends from high school, who are Michael Rappaport and Matt Dillon.
Yep, okay. None of these are young men, but part of that is because I am not thinking about 1996 versions of any of them.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway. You're thinking about now versions because they went on and did things.
Yeah, right.
And you also have, Uma Thurman is in there, and Rosie O'Donnell, like, before, right as she was about to get her TV show, and like, so it's this huge thing. And that young girl, Marty, the 13-year-old that like Timothy Hutton is like smitten with, is Natalie Portman. So, like, they're not wrong when they said this, but I watched the film, and I like it enough, right? Like, I like that type of movie. if I'm gonna look at a movie about like you can't go home or things change after college, my number one is gonna be Kicking and Screaming, the 1995 Noah Baumbach, not the Will Ferrell soccer movie. I let me tell you, when my friend's like, "Oh, we're gonna watch Kicking and Screaming for the first time," I'm like, "That fucking soccer movie?" And he slapped me across the face, and rightfully so, because the Noah Baumbach, it's like Noah Baumbach's coming out, and the reason why he is who he is today,
Right.
doing things that he does, is because of something like Kicking and Screaming. But they made a show in 2007, so about 10 years later, called October Road, that is heavily inspired, and some consider a spiritual sequel to Beautiful Girls.
Okay. All right.
So, you know, because it's on IMDb, there's a link, so I click October Road, and I see that the first season is available for the price of one episode of the season. I can buy an episode of the season for $4, or I can buy the whole season for $4. It's 6 episodes, but I'm interested enough in this show. I'm 3 episodes deep. I'm fucking in love with it right now. Really, the only person who you'd recognize from anything else is Laura Prepon, or Prepon. I don't know how you pronounce her name.
Laura Prepon. I don't know either.
Do you have any Laura Prepon? And Tom Berenger is also in it. Like, he plays the father of the main guy. And they've gotten rid of the whole Natalie Portman, I'm in love with a 13-year-old storyline. Good job, guys. I'm 3 episodes in, and I'm really enjoying it. But the thing about it, like the thing that I was initially hesitant about, and I think about every time I load up an episode, is the fact that I bought this off of Amazon, and at any moment, Amazon could be like, we're not paying for this anymore, so you don't have access to this thing you paid for anymore.
Yeah, we no longer carry this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's a really strong possibility. The real issue that I have with owning anything on Amazon is that, like, I have had an Amazon account for conservatively 20 years of my life. Like since I was a preteen, I definitely was ordering stuff off of Amazon. Started with Harry Potter books, and now, like, you know, it's old movies and TV shows and shit like that, right? But in that time, I have had 4 different emails, and I bet I know that there's probably about $50 to $60 worth of, like, movies that I have bought from Amazon that I no longer have access to, simply because, like, I updated emails, started a new Amazon account, didn't think about the fact that I had digital stuff from them, and then, like, one day was like, oh man, remember that thing I bought from Amazon? Went to go looking for it and realized I no longer had access to it because, like, I had lost that account. I don't have access to that email anymore. You know, one that was started on, like, a school account. I can't get into that school email anymore. Like, shit like that. Like, it's so I can't change my password, so I'll never get in. It sucks. And they introduced this idea a few years ago of the Amazon Family Library, where you could combine your library with other people in your family so that you could all watch the stuff you owned. And I thought, oh, this is great. This is a phenomenal workaround, because the other thing I can do with this is I can take all of these other accounts that I at least still remember the login information for currently, and I can add them to my family account, meaning that I'll just always have access to them. So it's me and 3 others that are all together in one family.
It's like multiplicity.
I have this now combined library, right? Except that what they didn't say in any of that is that certain things were not going to be allowed to be shared even via family library due to licensing content, like whatever the contracts were. So I combined all that, went through all this work, and I now have access to maybe 3 extra SpongeBob episodes. Like, that's it. Like I'm like, where the hell are the rest of my movies and shit? So that didn't work either. So, like, keeping track of your shit as things have changed, because, like, with Google, they are really good at, like, when you go in and say to them, like, I want to update my information, they take your full account and then they change the email attached to it and stuff like that. I still have multiple Googles, because you should always do that, because you never want to give certain emails out to, like, certain places. But, like, for instance, like, Domino's only has access to my shitty account that also gets a bunch of, like, fucking scrap, because, you know, Domino's is selling your information at the end of the day.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, like, yeah, so So Google is really good about keeping my stuff connected though, no matter what. So I don't have that same issue there. But like iTunes, like I bought albums off of iTunes that I couldn't even tell you what email they were under anymore, and like I haven't used iTunes in so long, I've just had to give that up as a loss. And like it's the other part of this digital thing that is as much on me as I think on them is that like we all make changes in our lives that mean that we aren't going to be able to necessarily use the same digital imprint that we used to. And like you kind of just have to give up the ghost on that stuff and just assume like, all right, I have to cut that's part of my losses. It's like who did I lose in the divorce? Like, oh, okay, like this is I no longer have access to my Full Metal Alchemist full series that I bought when I was at URI because that was on an iTunes account under my URI email. I'm never getting back into that.
Yeah, that's I never even considered that thing because I have used the same email address since 1999.
Yeah.
And there's just everywhere, and that has become my Domino's bullshit like email and for everything. But you're not wrong. I didn't even consider that aspect of it. And honestly, subconsciously, it probably was, oh, no. We're going to link everything to this one shitty email that we don't use for anything else. And we'll just keep it that way so that we can hold on to everything digital as best as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, keep in mind that like my earliest emails were like Yahoo addresses.
Oh yeah, no,
you know what I mean like their stuff or like AOL addresses that like they just part of it is that the structure just the infrastructure just wasn't there to have an email.
No, you're not
anymore,
wrong. Yeah.
Right. Like
yeah. No,
I still had a GeoCities account somewhere, but
GeoCities is back apparently. But let's not talk about GeoCities right now. That's depressing to me that people can still build GeoCity websites. And it might be gone at this point, but someone was talking about it, and I'm just like, no, really, no. Oh man, the early days of the internet, crazy stuff. But yeah, October Road is good, and so is Beautiful Girls. They're worth a watch. That is Circulean the way I wanted to share it. But also, I'm done with Amazon Luna, and I didn't stamp it before. I stamped the whole Netflix for games aspect of it, but the infrastructure is not there at all.
I mean it really doesn't
not
surprise
surprising.
me.
I know
Amazon is really having some trouble, I think, behind the scenes. Not in like any way that means like Amazon's gonna be dead tomorrow. Like that's never gonna happen. But did we talk about like the issues between or IMDb TV and Amazon? I feel like we talked about this, right?
Bullshit,
and like how they're two different things, and like then you have the whole all of the stuff going on with Luna, where it was clearly like somebody was like, we got to get this out the door before Christmas because Stadia is kicking our butts right now, and then like nobody thought to actually put any like thought behind like the release of it. I if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have known that the Luna was even like out right now.
I don't even think it is technically out.
On the horizon.
I still think it's technically in beta. I still think I'm technically a beta tester, which is why it's hard for me to say no dice, what a drag to Amazon Luna. But after just I don't generally get frustrated with video games. Like it's not a thing that happens. I play a game, and if I hit a wall, like I recognize that I've hit that wall. But this was a challenger that I was not prepared for. I wasn't prepared for the challenger to be the hardware and not the software. Because like the software, I got to the last section of this boss, which says to me, you know how to do this. You know how to do this. All you got to do is like maybe save a health potion or save some magic, and you can beat this guy. But then when the issue is actually the hardware saying, no, I can't let you play this right now. Network issues, you see. And like I think the biggest thing that frustrates me about it is that it says that I'm on 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi, and like no, I've been on 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi for 4 years, Amazon. So I don't know what you're smoking when you're telling me I'm on the wrong Wi-Fi right now.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like the Luna, like you're beta testing it. This is exactly what they need to hear, is that there is a line that you're no longer gonna put up with, and so like the the inability of that to stay connected at the most important parts of those games is key for them to know. And if it's enough for you to send the thing back in, like, I don't know, don't feel weird about it. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to do as a beta tester.
Yeah, I know, and that's the thing. Like, and I'm not. Every time, like in the beginning, I'm like, well, I'm not going to report that because maybe the issue was on my end. But then as I kept going, I'm like, these issues can't be on my end because I'm playing a lot of Super Mario 35, and I'm having no connection issues with that game, which is connected to 34 other people at the same time
and using Nintendo's infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I'm probably the server for the other 34 people. And Dale does so much Apex, like, and those are both on wireless things, right?
Yep.
We wired up our PS5 because we didn't want the downloads to take too long, because we're able to do that. So that's the only game system in this house that's wired directly into our internet. So everything else we're doing is Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And also
the only issues I've ever had with anything is like Stadia's actually run really well for me. There's been a little bit of like pop-in stuff where like it doesn't quite load as cleanly at first, but once it loads in, it's fine. The only real true thing that we've had any issues with is like we've been playing Stardew, I kid you not, in like 10 to 12 hour marathons, and inevitably in there our shitty Comcast internet will dip for like a second, and it's enough to kick us out of the game, and we have to like restart the day. But we know that it's not we know it's not the PlayStation, and we know it's not the game, because what'll happen is we'll all lose internet for all of like 2 minutes, and then it'll come back. Thanks, Comcast.
If we learned anything from 2020, it's just how bad the infrastructure in this country truly is.
Yeah.
Because we always believed that it was bad, but then when the internet was so necessary for so many things, it couldn't handle it. And I really hope that, like, another silver lining of 2020 is that we actually build up the internet in this country.
Yeah, build like good internet for everybody to actually use.
And for everybody too, because like we're on coasts, and currently the coastal infrastructure is better than like the flyover states, where there are whole sections that still don't have like fiber.
Oh yeah, man. I deal with this every day. My company, a tech-based company, is ever so slowly moving more and more towards everything being a download, everything having to stay connected, because then you can activate your product, so it can read licensing on our server, like all of that sort of shit. And it's not working for I won't say a majority of our people, but like we service the construction industry. So you have a lot of older dudes that run their companies, have run them for 30 years now. They've had to get with the times and get a computer, but like they're not happy about it type folk, right? And they'll call up because they're like, I don't have the internet to download this right now. What normally is a 10-second download is for these guys 3 hours. And they're like, I don't have 3 hours. I got to get out on the job. And we're just like, sorry, this is the only thing. Like, we have guys that call up and request like disk download, like disk install. They're like, do you guys still make discs? Can you mail me discs? And we're like, no, we can't. We don't do that anymore. And that's actually kind of detrimental to a part of our base, But it's one of those things where like it's not their responsibility to have to get dragged into the future, but it's also not our responsibility to have to keep leaning back into the past. And that is when things like the government is supposed to step in, you'd think, but like there's a lot of people in this country that don't believe that, actually, which is unfortunate.
You're not wrong. I mean, it's finding that happy medium between the two. And for a long time in this country, the scales have been tipped in let's keep a whole leg in the past rather than just a foot.
Yeah.
Because if you have a foot in the past, it's easier to make progress and bring that foot along. Even if you're dragging it, it's still like catching up. But when you have your whole leg down in the past, it's really difficult to make progress for everybody.
Yeah, you ain't moving anywhere, man. Yeah, and like it is definitely something that we realized this year, but like you said earlier, we kind of already knew it and we never did anything about it. So I am hesitant to see if we actually do anything about this. I mean, if the latest round of stimulus check conversation is proof of anything, it's that we have learned nothing from this year at the government level.
I mean, I learned something pretty heavy, and that's the value of my life is less than I thought it was 9 months ago.
Yeah.
But let's not get political right now. We're supposed to be celebrating 2020 and celebrating 2020. We're supposed to be celebrating the end of 2020. And I can't think of a better way of doing that, Sejan, than hopping in our Wayback Machine. And do you know where we're going right now?
No. Are we going? I have no idea where we're going, Dev.
All right. So I've set the dial for 2015, and I've made no changes to the date. Because 5 years ago, you and I sat together in this basement where I record the show with a couple of other people to discuss Star Wars The Force Awakens.
Yeah. Are we going to talk about the lost episode?
In an event that has now been christened the Gincident. Because somebody, and it was me, it was Devin Decker, thought it would be a good idea to just pound a pint of gin. It's not, all right? This is a PSA about proper drinking at the holiday season. If you're feeling good, don't add more alcohol, okay? That's it. And certainly, don't ever do a pint of gin. That if you don't want to live, maybe that's when you do it. I did it like a shot. I did 16 ounces of gin like a shot. That wasn't smart. That wasn't smart. But Sejan,
talking about is the evils of gin? Is that what we're
doing?
No,
but it's so crazy because this is our first episode that we're recording on the solstice, and it's a solstice where we're not having the usual to-do at the Decker house, right? If this were normal 2020 instead of 2020 dark, this episode would have been recorded yesterday morning at around 10 a.m., and it would have been released, and we would have gone about our business. But because there can't be a solstice party, because of the global pandemic that just isn't really showing any signs of stopping, even as we have 2 vaccines.
Right.
But it seemed like it would feel weird not to sort of remember that moment when we talked about Star Wars The Force Awakens in this basement.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, it didn't necessarily shape our relationship so much as it brought to light what a lot of our back and forth was going to be, for sure. And interestingly, what the rest of the world was going to feel about things and say about things, and how we were going to, ride that wave, but ride it in our own way, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was important. It was a whole year before we sat in that Dave & Buster's and said, let's do a show together. Because I think we were both working on our other podcasts, right? I think you were a guest from Super Kenshi, and I was Devin Decker of Two Friends on the Couch. And then we had some of, like, Dale's roommates from college and other people that I had known from life. Like, it was cool. It's the kind of thing I've always wanted to redo, is that large roundtable assembly. But at the same time, we did it once, and we saw just how chaotic it can be.
Oh, for sure. Well, yeah, and it was chaos. I mean, there was things going on, lest we forget the Gincident. But
I thought we had. Thank you.
But there is definitely there's a warm place in my heart for, like, the in and out, like, people can come and sit down and talk with us about this thing for a few minutes, but then we'll rotate out to new people. We're going to hear 1,000 different opinions. Some of these people are going to counter what was said before them and introduce ridiculous stuff to be countered later. Like, I very much enjoyed that night.
Yeah, so did I. A little too much, but everything up to that point was really fun. Was a really good time. And I don't know, I just wanted to thank you for it. Is the last time we were ever together for a solstice? Like, that, feel like that's worth mentioning. And I hope we're together for a solstice sometime in the future. Because we go all out for it. But yeah, I'm glad that you have those memories. I have no memories, and I'm fearful to listen to what is there. I know that there was a lot of fighting about whether Leo was Force sensitive or not. And I'm pretty sure that both of us were on the same side as, well, obviously, have you seen Return of the Jedi?
I mean, we are literally told by Yoda that there is another. When Luke is worried that he is going to be the final Jedi, he is told by Yoda, "Do not worry, there is another Jedi in the universe." And then everybody shit their pants when they revealed that Leia was the other Jedi. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was before Leia flew through space, which we've talked
Mhm.
about on this. And that doesn't bother me as much. I don't know. I mean, where are we? Like, apparently this time next year there are going to be 10 concurrent Star Wars series going on.
Right. Yeah. I it's really weird because if you asked anybody about like the Star Wars universe right now, they'd probably tell you how this isn't fair. I wouldn't say anybody, but there is a certain sect of people in this country where if you ask them how they felt about the Star Wars universe right now, they would tell you that it was the worst of times, but like it is the best of times, it is the worst of times because we also have The Mandalorian right now. There's also now going to be a whole other show. Are we spoiling? I don't know. But like there's also going to be another Clone Wars style show out. There's a new Clone Wars movie coming out. There's all sorts of weird shit that's going to be coming out over the next year that is stuff people have been asking for in that universe. So I don't understand how anybody could be disappointed in the Star Wars universe right now. And like you said, we haven't been from the beginning of all of this madness from 5 years ago. We have always been on board with this.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really what I want to celebrate, because you're not wrong. There's certain dissent amongst the fans of Star Wars going on right now. I think that everyone can agree to that, right?
Right.
And I mean, I've never considered myself a Star Wars fan. Like, I don't think I could go to the meetings. I wouldn't know the handshake, but
Yeah.
I enjoy them for what they are.
Yeah, I think we even talked about it that night.
Yeah.
Like we talked about the idea that like Star Wars was something that was in our lives, but was never something that was so definitive for us like it is for some people. Like we didn't go to the prequel premieres like in costume and stand in line for 6 hours for tickets. Like that's just not the kind of Star Wars fans that we ever were. Not to say that there's anything like wrong with that level of fandom. Anybody that can have that kind of love in their heart for a thing like is clearly a special kind of person, right? Like there are things that we would do that for, that we did do that for.
Yeah.
But like the idea that Star Wars just wasn't one of those things. So maybe we just didn't have as much riding on it as some of these people. But like I have to imagine that these people that are the kinds of person that would have stood in line for 6 hours for tickets to like Attack of the Clones. Let's talk about like bottom of the barrel in terms of hopes and dreams. Like not necessarily quality. I happen to really like that one, but Revenge of the Sith is the one that I mean. Is like the idea that you had already gotten 2 prequels before that had gotten kind of shit on by the rest of the world, but you still held out hope and still went and stood in line for those tickets and still went to that movie. And like I cannot imagine that anybody that went through that has been really disappointed, shall we say, in the last 5 years of Star Wars, because like there's just been too much good stuff going on with it. It's like as much stuff as you can say, oh, they went in a direction I didn't like here. I don't think that this worked for me there. Like I don't think that you could talk about Star Wars being like dead to you right now if you were that kind of fan, because there's too much other stuff that's too good right now.
Right. I mean, I haven't done any Mandalorian. I did the first episode, and then it was decided we're going to wait for it all to be done, and a binge is in our future, and I'm excited for that binge of season 2 of The Mandalorian. But even as someone, like, just because we're not those people, it's not an admonishment of the people who do that. And honestly, I think that's one of the biggest issues with that particular fandom. And that's another thing I think we saw 5 years ago is if you're not 100% committed to it, if you haven't seen every movie, 10 times, then like, why are you interested in this? I don't understand the gatekeeping of Star Wars fans. I think what I want to bring forward.
Yeah, I think it's probably something that we could probably point to all the way back in the day, right? And it gets and I think it's because people that grew up with Star Wars and being fans of Star Wars really did have a certain barrier to entry in the rest of culture. Like Star Wars was not always cool, right? Like that's the easy way of putting it, and it's a really derivative way of diminishing way of putting it, because that's not the entire picture. But the idea that somebody that was with the series before it was cool, and like the idea that they put up with some shit because they were in the series, and they felt like they put that fight in back in the day to prove that they were still fans. The fact that people don't have to do that now is, I think, something that rubs them the wrong way. And we see this with everything. I put in my dues, you didn't have to. So like clearly you're not as big of a fan or as big of a part of this as I am. And it's that silly ass thing of like you shouldn't feel that way. You should feel that you open the door to more people to be involved in the thing that you love. Like that is the attitude you should have. The fact that it is so easy for a kid to get into Star Wars now, and he's not going to get picked on at school, and he's not going to be felt like the outsider at parties and stuff like that just because he's super into Star Wars. Like, we should be happy with that progress. And there are people that go the other way with it. They see that kind of progress and they feel like it's ruining it for them, and I don't understand it either. I don't like that's where it comes from. And what's interesting is you compare it for like people have for so long to the idea of like the Star Trek fandom, and the Star Trek fandom has its own level of that, but it is not nearly as present or as bad. And I think that's due, in fact, because Star Trek was always more TV oriented than movie oriented. So the idea that it was more widely available to a lot more people and in a lot larger, easier to consume format than the movies of Star Wars up until, the last 10 years. But like, the idea that Star Trek has always had like a series on TV for people to get into in new ways and stuff like that has made that door open a little bit wider than the Star Wars one. Yeah, I don't get it either though, man.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so strange to me, especially because it's 5 years later and the conversation feels like it hasn't changed. Like, I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to revisit it. Because here's the thing. So 5 years ago, my father, who was not a Star Wars guy, wasn't like, you have to see this movie in 1997. I did not go to theaters to watch the re-release. We rented it one weekend at the movie store, and it wasn't even a movie store. It was a drugstore that rented movies. And my father's like, "Oh, they got that new Star Wars. Let's check it out. You've never seen that, right?" And we watched it. And I liked it, but like it didn't become my identity in that moment.
Right.
And so I come from that, but my father, he saw BB-8 in trailers for Star Wars, the Force Awakens, and was like, "I love that little guy. He's just rolling everywhere." And it became a joke for the next while Star Wars was a thing again. Not that it was ever not a thing, but like there are new movies in this new trilogy coming out, where we would give him BB-8 t-shirts for Christmas. And it's kind of funny because I feel like I'm kind of a wardrobe or costumer on a TV show. And just like inexplicably, the Dennis Decker character is always wearing a BB-8 shirt.
Well, he is the Sheldon of your group, I have to say.
Oh, don't say that to him. He would be very upset about that. He would be very upset about that. And he would say I'm the Sheldon of the group. And I'm upset when he does that to me. Like, but we're just too similar to not both be Sheldon at the end of the day. But it, like, this year it comes to it and there's no new movie, and like it feels like that tradition is over. Like he doesn't need any more BB-8 shirts. First of all, we've kind of got him every BB-8 shirt that was available. Like, we even like one year had to dip into BB-9E shirts because like there are no new BB-8 shirts, but this guy, right? And I don't know, he's got a shirt. Maybe he's gonna be a big deal, and he's in like 5 seconds of Last Jedi. So it'd be
comedic relief from the comedic relief that is BB-8. Yeah.
Oh man, Last Jedi's got some problems, but we talked about it already. We don't need to go deeper. Then again, some people are rethinking it, and I would love to go back to it someday. Not today, not already this deep in the episode. But it's just, I don't know. It's like Star Wars isn't over, but hearing people talk about it again, I'm like, did the last 5 years not happen?
Yeah.
Did I not get a trilogy that was like about as good as the other two trilogies at the end of the day? Like,
I don't know, man. It's the same thing where like because of a lot of the stuff that happened with season 8 of Game of Thrones, you suddenly got a weird amount of like upswing in people talking about like, hey, remember Lord of the Rings and like maybe those Hobbit movies weren't so bad. At least they weren't season 8 of Game of Thrones. And it's just like that's not. I mean, we were done with that, and like it's cool that we want to talk about them nostalgically and go back to them, but like let's not like talk about how good they are in terms of compared to a show made in 2000. It's a real weird like conversation to bring them into like let's talk about George R. R. Martin and the fucking like incestuous true stories of the like the War of the Roses like that is going on in Game of Thrones versus like Lord of the Rings, which I think what it is for me is that Lord of the Rings deserves to be held to its own standard. You know what I mean? Like it's pretty good on its own, guys. We don't have to talk about it in the shadow of this thing that disappointed you. Much in the same way of like Star Wars, like it constantly seems like every conversation about Star Wars has to be like within the shadow of this thing that somebody doesn't like about Star Wars, and it's like, or you could just like it. It's cool.
Yeah. Even though, like I've said, I don't like Last Jedi. There are parts of Last Jedi that I think are pretty awesome. Just as a whole, not really my cup of tea. Ditto, just watched Endgame, right? Didn't finish it because Far From Home is still waiting. But we're like one movie away from finishing our rewatch of the MCU.
Yeah.
And like watching Endgame again, I'm like, this is a pretty solid movie. There's some parts in it that are absolute garbage to me, but like it doesn't upset the entire bunch the way that it did for me the first time. Like, and that's nice to know, right?
Yeah.
That like
I mean, like that's the thing is like we talk about movies all the time that we know have certain issues, maybe problematic scenes, maybe problematic through lines, like characters, things like that we still love despite like these glaring issues that they have. Like, and why can we not apply that same level of thinking to a movie that came out yesterday that we do to movies from 15 years ago? And I don't mean we, just you and me, Dev, because
no,
we do.
We.
I feel like
yeah,
we do that. I
definitely
feel like
do.
you and I do that, right? Yeah. But like I hold a lot of things up to the same standard that I do from years ago, just not in the same conversation, in the same breath, in the same like I'm not disappointed in Star Wars not being as good as like Dune from from the 80s, because like I have a certain love for Dune. Both have issues. Both could talk about structurally not being very well made in terms of like interpretations of the lore and like what the fans wanted and all that sort of stuff. So like let's talk about Dune and Star Wars in the same breath. No, it doesn't work that way. like you have to compartmentalize in certain ways. And the fact that we can't do that in the immediate, but we seem to be able to really do that with nostalgia. I mean, it's maybe just the fault of pop culture. Like this show has always talked about the idea that nostalgia really is key nowadays to American pop culture. You need to know what you loved from 20 years ago in order to understand what you're going to like tomorrow, is like this attitude that has developed, and it's not always good. It's not always healthy.
No, it's not. And I mean, I've watched the first episode of the new Animaniacs, and that was kind of what they were preaching while also being it. And that was hard for me to grasp with. Like,
well, I mean, and they explain at the end. They explain at the end, it's all for money. Like, that is literally the last beat of the
it's
the show.
Okay that we do it, because we acknowledge that we did it. Bye.
Yeah.
I'm just like, screw you, Animaniacs. I don't like you. I never liked you.
Yeah, but that episode specifically points at you and goes, "We don't care."
Yeah, no, exactly. Right. That's that. And I'm not mad at them for doing that, but I'm just like, yeah, okay. But you can go be there not caring about what I think about you in the corner. I don't need to watch you not care in front of me. All right. So I think that's everything on that. I need to talk about something else, and the proper time to do this was when we were talking about Cyberpunk that had a 9-year development cycle, and I brought up Duke Nukem Forever, which had a 14-year development cycle, because last night, the final level of a game that now had a 15-year development cycle dropped. And Seijun, do you know what that was?
Was it strong bad?
It was Stinko Man
Yeah.
20XD6. The final level, level 10, dropped yesterday at like 10:56 p.m. is the earliest I saw anything about it.
Unlike HomestarRunner.com, like on
HomestarRunner.com on
yeah.
the home page, Stinko Man level 10. Now you want to talk about losing a digital footprint, Siegen.
Is it flash based? Is it
Oh,
Stinko Man?
you have 10 days to finish Stinko Man.
No, amazing.
Because Flash dies on December 31st, 2020. And that's something, isn't it? Have you been getting the notifications?
All right, every time I bring up Google Chrome, there's been a banner for a year now saying, "Hey, Flash is going to work after 2020. Click here to find out what you can like do to like save things." And it's just like I don't really. There isn't anything I can do to stop this from happening. So.
I get full in operating system pop-up windows from Adobe saying, "Hey, we noticed you have Flash installed. Maybe you should get rid of that, because we're getting rid of it on the 31st of December."
Yeah, like, man. Well, speaking of being dragged forward into progress,
right?
Yeah.
But I gotta say, 20XD6, Stinko Man 20XD6. I'm just gonna call it Stinko Man going forward. I remember playing that like 3 family computers ago.
Yep.
So all of my progress in that game is gone. So today I had to play through Stinko Man again.
Excellent.
And it's based on bad games. Like, that's part of its joy, is that it's a love letter to the bad games of the NES era. But really, I only had a lot of difficulty in the first level. And then I'm like, that's right, the game's just bad. I just need to go slow. I'm not speedrunning Stinko Man right now.
Right.
And I had not a lot of problems until I got to level 8, which is the glitched world based on the minus zone, where like you don't know if a platform's a platform or not, and that's hella frustrating.
Yeah, it becomes, because it has the veneer of like we're making a bad game on purpose. You kind of give it a little bit of a pass, but it is that exact thing that I hate in what are they called, like Kaizo runs or whatever, where like
Kaizo Super Mario?
Kaizo runs where like you're like, yeah, I'm gonna jump right over across that gap. Oh, it's just big enough that I can't make it, so that's not the right way to go. Like, and you can't tell that, so you try 1,000 times. It's frustrating is the nicest word to use.
The negative zone is that, but the 10th level, right? It's a castle level, which is good because it's the final boss's castle. And the second to last level of the game, spoilers for Stinko Man, right? I don't know if anyone's going to play it. I saw one person streaming it on Twitch, and they introduced a new mode. I'll get back to what I was talking about. A new mode is like, it has all of the concessions of video games of today, like checkpoints, and if you fall off the edge into a bottomless pit, you don't die. You just respawn and lose a bit of health.
Okay.
And you have 6 health points, right?
Okay.
So you have new mode, right? I played it on classic mode because I played through the other 9 levels when I was younger on classic mode, and I'll be damned if 34-year-old Devin is going to feel inferior to 16-year-old Devin. Fuck that guy.
You got to work on that. But yeah,
you've never had a beer. So I did it on classic mode, and I threw it on Twitch because I'm like, I want to see if anybody's streaming it, right? And the one guy, he's playing the game, he's playing it on the new mode, and he's like, it's just so unfair, it's so unfun, and I'm just like, and goodbye. I can't watch this because you're playing on the mode that's not unfair and not unfun and feeling that way. And that's heartbreaking to me because, But there was a moment playing the last level of Stinko Man that I felt heard and seen by the brothers Chapman. And that is the fact that the second to last level, right, the proper level before the boss fights, is sort of a boss rush, but not a boss rush so much as you walk through all of the terrains that you've gone through in the game so far. So it's interesting, right? So level 1, it's the first level. Level 2 is the second level. And as I got to the end of the second level, I'm like, if I have to go through like 5 more of these, I'm gonna be frustrated. I'm already kind of like, I get the joke, but come on, guys. And then you get to the third level, and it combines the fourth and fifth world. And then the next one is the sixth and seventh combined. And then the last one is just, you're done, right? There's a little glitch graphic, and then it's like, no, we get it. Like, you got the nostalgia of the boss rush, but even we were like, we're not going to fuck you over, though. We're not going to make you do this whole game again.
Nice. Yeah.
So that was good. And it's a good little ending. And they did, it's nice to see that it's finally completed, but it's real weird that you only have 10 days to play it. You want to get pissy with Nintendo about the fact that they're going to delist Mario Brothers in March.
On a meta level, it just makes so much. It makes
does.
Sense in a weird way. Like, that's why it's okay with me. Also, you didn't pay for it, right?
No,
like,
it's free. It's a free Flash game.
Yeah.
I would, but here's the thing: I would pay for it to like tie in everything that we've talked about, right? To do our own level 10.2 in this episode of the Say Report. Like, I'd pay for this game, but like, I don't know if I'd pay for Blasphemous, a game that I've enjoyed when it's working. So
well, I mean, part of it is because I could see them putting this together as like a $10 package, or even a 15, possibly even 20, depending on what they add to it. $15 package on Steam, like easy, right? Like
that's what I hope happens.
Yeah,
I mean, and that's what a lot of.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of older games have started to do, is that they've started to put together like developer packages of like old Flash games and like, updating them to no longer use Flash. But then like, you do have to pay like $5 to $10 for these games that you just used to just play for free back on the back on Flash. And like, if we want things to continue, that's the concession that we kind of need to make, right? Like, we've talked about like video game history and how do you save some of these things that are so influential to video games, but at the same time are also part of their influence was the fact that they were so fleeting, is like, well, you're going to get this kind of slightly altered version that you have to pay a little bit of money for, even though back in the past it was free and the graphics didn't look quite like this. But that's okay, like, because you're still talking about it, you're still thinking about it, you're still involved in it. And we have to kind of get used to that, because otherwise, like we were talking about with the Amazon stuff, talking about tying everything together, like, we're going to lose this stuff. It's going to get lost to the ages, and we're never going to have it again.
Yeah, God, you're not wrong. Remember addictinggames.com? How
I
much
still
time
go.
did you... Oh, I love you, man!
I still go to addictinggames.com. There's a jewelry game. There's a jewel combining game on there where, like, you put the 2 silvers together to make a gold, put the 2 golds together to make an orb, to put the 2 orbs together to make a gem. Like, I started that at the beginning of lockdown with like, this is just something I'm just going to do on my computer to kill time between calls. And I kid you not, I got to almost the end of that game and then had to do a company-wide like reinstall reset of things on our computer that wiped my progress, like cleared my cache. And it broke my heart. Like, it only happened like 2 weeks ago, but I had been playing it for no joke like 6 months and some odd days, like, and it was all gone.
Pouring one out for my homie Siegen.
Not gonna be able to play that game after the end of December, though.
Jesus, it's so crazy that Flash is leaving.
Hmm?
All right, but that's it. Yeah, if you're interested,
that's 2020.
That's 2020, right?
Like Flash.
That's the
Flash
final
leaving.
fuck you of
Exactly.
2020.
Is Flash being gone?
It was so influential, Flash. Like, it's so crazy. I remember all those shows that like Hasbro paid to have done on their own cable network, the Hub, that were just Flash animation. I mean, Friendship is Magic is done in Flash. Like, let's just talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about it. Now we're done. All right. Well, I think I've hit most of the stuff I want to talk about this week. Is there anything else you want to bring to the table before we send this one off to the vault?
Oh, I mean, it's been a wild year. I was about to say it's been a good year, but obviously that would be a poke in the eye to a lot of our listeners. But like, but it's been a wild year. I cannot believe it's over. I'm kind of excited it's over. But God knows what 2021 is going to be. But you know what? We're still going to be here.
Yeah, we're still going to be here recording for you, which is what brings me to the part that I wanted to do in the beginning to make sure that you heard it, But that's not our style. Our style is to hope that you clashed and thrashed through the jungle with us to get to our final thought. And my final thought of the Say Report, and it's a little lame, and it's not going to be the final thought, right? Because that's not how we run, is all Devin Decker wants for Christmas, if you're someone who listens to the Say Report, please drop us a rating and review in the iTunes store or wherever you listen to podcasts. I love doing the show. We've talked about how much we love doing this show, but we want to hear from you. If you like the show, if you listen to the show, just all you gotta do is 5-star it and write a little thing like it's a good show. I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to see that. I'm just gonna say it. I'm gonna ask, right? Siege, is that too much? Is that too much for me?
To do what every other podcast has had to do it from the dawn of podcasting is to ask for just a quick rating and review from our listeners. I don't think it's too much for us to ask, Dev.
It feels like too much, right? So I'm putting it in my Christmas letter to Santa. Dear Santa. But yeah, it'd just be nice if for Christmas you can give us a rating and review. Because we're going to be here for you. We're not going to be here for you, right? We got our Grinch very special episode. We'll be dropping on Christmas Eve. So if you are one of those people who is unfortunately unable to see people, spend Christmas Eve with us watching the Jim Carrey Grinch movie. And one of our hearts grows 4 sizes that day. Mm-hmm. It's incredible. It's incredible.
It's a good one.
And then also next week, we're going to have, it's a throwback time capsule episode to the 30th anniversary of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, which is exciting, right? I love that movie. Siegen loves that movie. Maybe a bit too much. We love that movie, but I think it's a fun one. So you'll have that.
Despite all its glaring issues. Yes.
And then we're going to be back on my birthday, January 4th, talking about Wonder Woman 84. I think that's not a big promise to make, right? I imagine you're going to watch Wonder Woman 84 before the 4th of January.
Yeah, man. I mean, with the way that it is coming into us direct to our TV, it's a big one to talk about, and I'm very excited to talk about it, especially in comparison to our feelings about Trolls at the beginning of this year and some other stuff that's happened this year in terms of big release movies deciding to come to the small screen. We definitely have to watch it and talk about it for sure.
Yeah. So there's your homework. I mean, no one likes homework over Christmas break, but it's see Wonder Woman 84, right? That's not homework. Yeah. That's a gift to yourself.
For sure.
And watch it on HBO Max if you can, right? Let's try to, not go, as much as I want the cinemas to survive. The numbers aren't reflecting that we should be going out to group events like that right now.
Right.
So, make your choice, but stay safe and stay strong. And, we're almost there. We're almost at the end of 2020. And if you'd like to send me some of the things you're looking forward to in 2021 or things you want us to talk about in 2021, I am available on Twitter at Devin D. Decker.
And if you want to send me some of the things that you are happy to say goodbye to in 2020, you can hit me up at Siege vs. the World.
All right. So until then, have a very happy Christmas and a Merry New Year. And Will, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Siegen Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.